Whew. I don't know why I'm a little nervous.
Oh man, come on, dog.
Hey, thank you, Tom, so much for coming. Thank you. I really appreciate you. Very much love. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Ogunribido, owner of Somos Dance Studios, executive director of CalDAC, bro. Thank you very much for gracing me with your presence today. I enjoyed our beautiful conversation we had earlier. Again, I appreciate you as a person. I appreciate everything you do for our community. And I'm so excited to give people some background on who you are, where you come from, and what you're about. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. So without further ado, I'd love to let you initiate your story. So where does this all begin, man? Like, when did you come to the United States? Like, when did this story of music and dance originate for you?
All right. Well, first of all, Ricky, thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it. This is freaking great, man. I love it. I'm like, oh my goodness, man. I get to interview the one and only. No, I really appreciate you, man. And thank you also for everything that you do for the community as well. I really appreciate you, and I really, really respect everything that you're doing.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on to share my story here. So it all started from Nigeria. So I'm from Nigeria originally.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah, I'm from Nigeria originally, and I moved to the United States in January 5th, 2000.
The exact date.
Yeah, I remember. That's
so cool.
I remember.
That's so cool.
January 5th, 2000. I remember that day so clearly because as I was coming, my brother was already here, Theodore Ogunribido, yeah? He was already here, and so he told me, he was like, hey, Tom, okay, you're going to be coming to the U.S., make sure, it's cold out here, you know what I'm saying? So make sure you pack something warm. And I was like, okay, cool. I get it, So I was like, okay, I'm going to bring one sweater, And my brother was like, no, you don't understand. It's going to be cold. Because, I lived in Nigeria my whole life, the coldest that we've got, I cannot think about what it would be in Fahrenheit. And but maybe maybe 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Maybe. It was the coldest it ever got.
Wow.
The coldest. It's 60 degrees, you know?
You come here.
And then my brother is telling me hey, pack something warm.
You're like, okay.
And yeah, I'm through a sweater, you know what I'm saying? And then and he was like, it's going to be really cold. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to do 2 sweaters, you know what I'm saying? And I get on that plane. I arrive in Chicago, January 5th. And I remember for the very first time, I saw snow because it had just snowed. Wow. You know what I'm saying?
Welcome.
Right? Yeah. The only thing I knew about snow up to that point was the snow globes. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And I'm not going to lie to you, man. That stuff looks really, really pretty, bro. Yeah, just coming, just all this, just white. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but bro, they opened those doors, and the cold air that came into that freaking fuselage and it came through my bones, it was like, what the devil is this? It was a crazy cold that I had never experienced in my life before.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got out of that plane. I'm like, what the heck am I getting myself into? And luckily my brother was at the airport.
Oh, so cool.
And he actually worked at the airport at the time. Cool. So he was there, and he was he knew I had no idea of what it meant to pack warm, you know what I mean? So he actually had a huge ass jacket for me, and so I was like, all right, cool,
Taking care
so
of
he got me taken care of. But yeah, I'll never forget January 5th, 2000. I'm never gonna forget that. I know, man. I was like, what? But yeah, so I moved to Chicago then, and I had already been playing the bass guitar.
Okay.
A
5-string?
I was playing a 4-string at the time. Yeah. In Nigeria, and I moved to the US, and I was still playing, so I would play at churches and stuff like that, weddings and things, But as I started getting into a little bit more of R&B, into jazz, and I got, as I was getting into jazz and playing a little bit more jazz and kind of playing around with that idea, I also started to listen and get acclimated and familiar with a lot of Latin jazz.
Sure.
And Latin jazz. With that, of course, I got into Tito Puente, who is still one of my favorite artists, Tito Puente,
Palmieri.
Palmieri, Tito Rodriguez, Mongo Santa Maria, and so that's kind of where the whole thing started, and everything started from the music,
right?
For me.
Cool.
So I had the music, and then the music became a thing that I was listening to, and I would also play, because the thing about Latin jazz, and I think maybe the thing that kind of endeared me to it was that, you know, it it always had that African flavor.
Mm.
Because let's face it, when they said Latin jazz, it's really Afro Latin jazz. It's
Oh,
not
of
just
course.
Latin jazz, right? It's
Oh
Afro
yeah.
Latin jazz
Oh yeah.
because
Yeah.
everything is Afro influenced.
Inspired.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And so we would have, of course, the congas are playing, the bongos are playing, and some of them have the clave. Clave is something that I grew up with.
Mm.
Every kid in Africa has some sort of, at least in Nigeria, I should say, not necessarily Africa, but Nigeria is what I know, right? We're always playing the clave everywhere you go.
Clacking on something.
We're playing some kind of clave, and so that rhythm was already, I was already very used to it, so hearing it, in the context of jazz, aka in Afro Latin jazz, it made me a little bit more like, okay, cool, I can jive with this. You
Yeah.
know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of got me into it musically.
Mm.
And this was probably around like 2002 was when I was really kind of getting a lot more into the Afro Latin jazz,
Mhm.
and that's when I had just gotten into the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, studying engineering. Yeah, go figure, right?
Mhm.
So I was studying mechanical engineering over there, and
Shouts out all the engineers, bro.
I know, right? For
Y'all
real,
have
right?
y'all have the hardest job. Y'all have the hardest schooling. Like, man.
Man, I can go on a completely different tangent about that regarding the amount of engineers that we have in the South Scene.
Oh, so
It's
cool.
ridiculous.
Tech, engineer, all
Right.
very analytical minds. Very
Right,
beautiful. Yes,
right.
yes.
But well, I digress, right? So yeah, I went to the University of Illinois and I studied mechanical engineering there, and I followed that path. I was still playing my music, on the side, but engineering was like
Your main
my
thing.
main focus.
I
Yeah.
understand.
Now with that being said, I then I graduated '06, and I started working at Caterpillar. I worked at Caterpillar as a mechanical engineer there for 3 years, and in 2009, I left my engineering job at Caterpillar. Long story, but we'll get to that later. I left my engineering job at Caterpillar to pursue my passion for music.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you, bro.
So, listen, some people would go their whole life without making a transition like that because they're afraid.
Correct.
So kudos to you, bro, for real.
Thank you.
And now you are where you're at, So it's like
Mhm.
it's all serendipitous and all a part of the playing for you.
Right. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. So I left my engineering job '09, started following the music, and I would play music, and back in those days, I played, sometimes I'll play like Latin jazz gigs, sometimes I play like rock en español, sometimes I play like some blues gigs, reggae.
Yeah.
I had two bands, the Alpha Clef, and then we had the Chicago Soul Review.
Cool.
So I played in like 7 bands.
All in Chicago.
All in Chicago.
Cool.
Correct. And so, but whenever I would play like, my Latin gigs, right? I'm like, I'm there, playing the bass, but I'm still moving because, if you know me, anybody that knows me knows, ever since I was like this, I always moved. I'm always a mover, So I'm always moving, dancing, kind of doing a little jig, here and there. But I'm playing the music and I'm watching people dance this thing and they're dancing it real nice. And I'm like, man, I want to dance like them, man. I enjoy playing the music for them to dance, but I want to dance too. You know what I mean? So eventually, like sometime in 2009, was when I then decided I was like going to start taking some classes, like actual formal classes, right? Because at the time I was still like, I can move and I can like go on the floor and kind of like fake it, a little bit, But but 2009 was when I actually decided I was going to like, okay, cool, let's actually get into
Put some pressure.
Put some time and put some like actual effort into it. You see what I'm saying? And so that's when the actual dance itself started. But the thing about that is obviously because of all of the musical parts of it that has started since 2002, but technically before that, right? Because even just my Nigerian upbringing had a lot of those has instilled
opportunities to play.
Exactly, to play and also to assimilate the music and like have the music like really
in your bones. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so all of that, I think, really culminated in when I actually started to like take what I knew in my mind and actually
And
starting
embodying.
and embodying it into actual movements. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of where
So beautiful.
That's where that was. That's
So
where that
cool.
was, yeah.
So cool.
And I want to give a shout out actually to the first dance school that I went to in
Yes,
Chicago.
of course, bro. I was just about to ask you, like, where did you go after you had this like inspiration? Where did you reach out to like follow this path that
Yes.
where did that originate?
Yeah, so Latin Streets.
Latin Streets. You heard that?
Yeah, Latin
Streets.
Street Dance Studios. Yeah, so right there in Chicago, and I want to just give a big shout out to Lisa La Boricua. Lisa La Boricua, she was my very very first instructor, and she was one of the first people that made me really believe that I can do this. And this is what Lisa has done for several people, and she just has this very big energy, and she's just so amazing at like helping people recognize like, hey, look, you know what, it's all good. Like, it doesn't matter where you came from, it doesn't matter how you started, it doesn't matter any of that. What matters the most is that if you have a heartbeat, you can dance,
right?
And so she's super supportive of people in general, and she really instilled in me up till today that's kind of way of teaching, where you're just like, hey, you know what, I'm all about teaching the complicated moves. I'm all about like showing all of like the very technical things. But the most important people out there are those folks that just are like, you know what, I can't do this. This is not for me. Nah, I can. And you're like, no, you, everybody can do this. You know what I'm saying? And as long as you bring an enthusiasm to them and you're able to like really show that positive vibe and reach them that way, they would really, they would take that and they can really learn to actually find themselves within themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Reconnect with your body for
Correct.
sure.
That was huge. So whenever I have an opportunity to, I always want to give a shout out to Lisa La Boricua. Thank you so much.
So cool.
Yeah.
So cool. That's amazing, bro. That's amazing. So, what's up?
I'm so sorry. I have to give another shout out.
All the shout outs you ever want to give, bro. Give your shout outs.
I got to give another shout out, a very big shout out to my brother, Damilare Adeyeri. I'm going to say his name for real. Damilare, or let me say the whole thing. Oluwa Damilare Adeyeri. He's my boy. He and I have been friends since high school in Nigeria. So we've been friends since 1993. And he is one of the main. He's one of the main forces that actually really did push me to the edge, like push me over the edge to actually go take a class, right? And Mr. Damilare, he's amazing, man. By the way, he's just so great. He's that kid, man, that he did everything. He did choir, he did debate club,
Renaissance,
he did
man.
acting club, he was that guy. You know what I'm saying? And so this dude comes to visit me in Chicago, right? And he's like, oh, let's go to a Latin club. And this is before I actually was dancing, because I had played in some of these places.
Right.
So we went to one of the places that I was playing at, The place, believe it or not, was called Rumba. Right? It's Rumba, but Rumba in Chicago, not La Rumba here in Denver, right? And we were there chilling, and when we got in, I was feeling cool. I'm like, yeah, I brought my friend to one of the places where I play at, I know the bouncers, I knew the manager.
Saying what's up to everybody.
Yeah, say what's up to everybody. I know the manager, I know the bartender, blah, blah, blah. We get a table, and of course, there was Latin Street was having they were having like a night a social that night, so you have everybody dancing and everybody just like rocking it, right? And so, Damilare, he and I get a table, and then we're just kind of chilling. We talk for a second. He has a drink. He's like, okay, I'm going to go dance now, And I was like, whoa.
You can't leave me here.
I'm like, oh, no. Oh, it wasn't even that. I was trying to protect him. I was like, bro, no, don't do that, man. Like, those people out there, they're professionals, man. Like, they know what they're doing. Like, I mean, I know we dance, but not like them. Like, they dance for real, And he was like, nah, it's okay. I got it, And I was like, all right, well, I tried to warn him, you know what I'm saying? And and he goes out there and he just rocks the floor. He's just like
tearing it up. Putting holes in the dance floor.
What? And I was like so mesmerized, man, because like I mean, you had girls like waiting in line to dance with him, and then he came back to the table, he just came back to the table to have it like a quick drink of water.
Thirsty.
Yeah, exactly. And then you had a girl that was really like, "Hey, would you like to dance?" And I'm just like, whatever, dude. You know what I'm saying? But at that point, that's when I was like, man, this dude, and
Possible.
yeah, I was like, of course,
Possible.
and this was before Damilare moved to the US. This is when he was still in Nigeria, so he was still in Nigeria, and I was like, yo, we don't dance salsa in Nigeria. What the heck did you start? You know what I'm saying? But he's actually one of the guys that actually started to popularize salsa in Nigeria. I think about salsa in Nigeria kind of like, it's like the African rhythms leaving Africa and then kind of
coming back,
going to the Caribbeans and going to the West and then coming back.
So cool.
You know what I'm saying?
That's so cool to think about.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
it's awesome.
Yeah, so it's really cool. And Damilare was one of the guys that actually kind of facilitated that. He was a DJ, a salsa DJ back there, and then he was a salsa instructor in Nigeria as well. So but like when. He hadn't really told me as much about it,
like what he's got going on.
Like what he's got going on regarding that. So that's why when I saw him do it, I was like,
jaw on the floor, yeah. He's like,
right, for real, But yeah, he definitely was one of the guys that was like, yo, if I can do it, man, you can do it. It's like we went to school together. I know you could move. I moved like you.
Like we learned together. Yeah.
And he really was the one that kind of like encouraged me.
That's really cool.
And then when I went to Latin Street. Then Lisa Laborigua was then the one that like took me, and
put a little bit of like air under your wings.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
So that's the long and short of my story. Call it what you may.
Getting to the salsa stuff, bro. And then you took that, you ran with it, right?
Yeah.
So you have a lot of these brainchilds that you brought into this world. You're the owner of Somos Dance Studios, one of the best salsa dance studios in the state, right?
I don't know about that, man.
Hey, listen, man. You're humble, but you have to realize what you got going on, bro. Seriously,
I appreciate you.
And then you have CalDAC, right? One of the best congresses in the country, in my personal opinion. Executive director of CalDAC as well. So I would love to hear some like origin stories of some of these things. So where did the original idea for Somos come around? What did that look like for you? And then how did you start enacting on that?
So the story of Somos actually starts from El Rasta Salsa.
Rasta Salsa.
Yeah, and then Rasta Salsa kind of, essentially started from Roberta Farley. I like to call these names out because I think it's important to give credit where credit is due. So I moved to Denver in 2015, and I moved to Denver to play music, to play with Paco. Yeah, the Paco band, which I'm still a part of. We don't play as much anymore these days. Paco loves going back to Nigeria. I'm going back to Ghana. He's from Ghana originally, yeah. And he comes back, and then we do like a quick tour, and we play around the country for a little bit. Come back, then boom. Once the winter comes around, he's like one of those winter birds, man. Once the winter comes around, he's like, I'm out. But that's what I came to Denver originally to do, to play music with Paco, but I dance too. So I was like, I would go to La Rumba and I would go there, hang out Los Tacos when Los Tacos were still there, But then the 2015 Denver Salsa Congress, I met Roberta Farley. We were just in the hallways. I don't even really remember what we were doing, but we just happened to bust into, to jump, to bump into each other, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? She's like, hey, how you doing? She's like, you're new in town. What's your name? My name is Tom. Oh, what's your name? My name is Roberta, blah, 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 blah. And we just dived like super hard right away. So after we talked for a little bit and we danced over at the Congress. And she's like, man, I love the way you dance. She's like, hey, I teach classes over at La Rumba on Saturdays. Do you mind coming to teach with me there? And I was like, well, I'm not a teacher. Like, I'm just a social dancer, stuff like that. And she's like, no. You don't even have to say anything. Like, it's just good to have like a lead
demonstration.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, oh, if it's that's fine, no worries. I'm okay, I'm down with that. She's like, okay, cool, can you come next week? I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, next week.
Right, for real. I was like, you know what, bet. All right, let's do it. So I go there, and I teach with her, and and it was a really, really fun time. It was really great. Now Of course, I try as much as I can to always stay in my lane no matter what, And then she would ask me questions. She's like, "Hey, Tom, so as
As the lead,
so as a lead, what would you say? Blah 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 blah." And I would be like, "Oh well, as a lead, just make sure that you are clear here. Make sure that you
prepping.
open up the door here. The front, the forward to do the crossbody lead, stuff like that, right?" And then at the end of the thing, she's like, "You know what? I really like the way you explained that. That was really nice, and you were kind of funny too. So it kind of kept the whole thing alive."
Give them energy.
Yeah, she's like, "Keep doing that. And I was like, "Cool." And then next week I came over. Same thing. The week after that, I came over the same thing. And then and then here comes December, right? And then she tells me, she's like, "Hey, Tom, so actually I'm going to Puerto Rico for a few weeks. Do you mind doing the classes while I'm gone?" And I was like, I don't know. I was like, well, Paco at the time, it was December, right? So he had gone back to Ghana, right? So we didn't have as many gigs in December. So I was like, sure, why not? Let me just give it a shot, right? And and so I did, 3 weeks, and then she sends me a message like, "Hey, Tom, so
I'm not coming back." Puerto Rico is actually really nice,
dude. Like for real, like you have no idea how close to truth that was. She's like, "Actually, I have to be here for an extra 2 weeks. An extra 2
That's
weeks.
hilarious.
And then I was like, "Okay, 2 weeks, that's fine." And then she's like, "Hey, Tom, I'm so sorry, but actually, I think I'm going to be here for about another month. But after that, I'll be back." And I was like, all right. So I ended up teaching at La Rumba for, I think it was from like December all the way through March of the next year. Every Saturday. I think it was
4 months.
Yeah, almost 4 months. Yeah, and it was really great. I love La Rumba, and my personality now is the same thing. It's like nothing has changed. Honestly, I'm still goofy. I was goofy then.
Yeah.
And I would do things like, for example, right? I'll be like, "Okay, all right, everybody, when you do a right turn, all right, you're gonna put your left foot in front, pivot to face the back, make sure you face the back, you face the bar, okay? All right, everybody, wave over at Danny, say, "Hey, hi, Danny." Everybody say, "Hey, Danny," blah 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 blah. It's like, okay, cool. All right, let's come back to class now. All right, now everybody, finish your your pivot on that right leg and you face the front. And I'm like, okay, cool, blah 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 blah.
Just keeping everybody engaged.
Keep them engaged, keep them, and then also a big part of it was just, like I would say something like, say for example, I'll say, like during that, I like to use that right turn situation. I love that. I'm like, okay, all right. When they do that first half part, the first half of the right turn, I'd be like, okay, now, all right, y'all facing the bar now, right? Everybody's like, yes. I'm like, okay, all right. So make sure after this class, everybody, we all go to the bar. We're all gonna go do shots, right? Everybody's like, shots, yeah, oh yeah, let's go do shots. I'm like, okay, cool, all right, but that's after class. All right, everybody, come on back now, right? You know what I'm saying? But what that did, was that it really helped the bar, because usually what would happen is that right after class, people would go to the bar. It's not as if they wouldn't go to the bar in the first place, but just that little extra thing really put it in people's minds, like, oh, after the class, I'm going to go get a drink. So things like that really stood out for La Rumba, and they really enjoyed having me there because they knew that, hey, you know what?
Yeah, you were helping their business,
that's
bro.
That's right,
yeah.
exactly. And if there's any advice I can give to anybody, any of the up and coming instructors and teachers and organizers and stuff like that, is like, you always want to do things that helps the venue that you're at. You cannot just think about yourself and what's good for you. You have to think about what's good for you, what's good for your clients, the students, the community, what's good for the venue, because when everybody can
it's all synchronous, it all works together.
My gosh, yeah, that's when success arrives. Honestly, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
I agree.
Everyone scratches each other's back. Everyone grows. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. But yeah. So
and then that rolled into Somos.
So no, not yet.
He said, not even close.
I'm sorry, man. You asked.
No, sorry.
You asked for the story.
No, sorry.
I'm gonna give you the story.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Please.
So but that's how I started teaching more and more at La Rumba.
Cool.
Right? But for me, the La Rumba gig was just the La Rumba gig. You know, so I go to La Rumba, I teach there every now and then, because I will still teach with Roberta when she actually did come back. I would teach with her a couple of times. And then there was a time, because of the fact that she saw how successful it was, and I had built a good rapport with La Rumba. So on several occasions, she would like take up a couple of weeks and say, "Tom, you take it." You know what I'm saying? And then after a while, she was just like, "You know what? Actually, Tom, you just take the gig." So I ended up doing La Rumba for about 2 years on Saturdays.
That's
You know
cool.
what I'm saying? Yeah. So that was a really big part. So I definitely want to give a shout out to La Rumba for sure.
Seriously,
Like for real,
seriously.
and a very big shout out to Danny Dawson, because Danny and Beth, they were really, really, really amazing to me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I never want to ignore a lot of important people that have actually helped me along the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that I might just, because of the way the brain versus the heart works, I might forget some people just from the brain. But like I tell people, like if I forget to make mention of your name, blame the brain, not the heart.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Intentionality is in the right place for sure.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so that's La Rumba, right? So I'm doing La Rumba, and I was like, okay, that's just going to be a La Rumba gig, and we're just going to do that just like it is. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Let's pause for a second.
Yeah, this is crazy.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, damn.
It's just loud as fuck. I wonder if we pull this down, if it'll.
No. I think let's leave for a second. I think.
Just wait a sec. Hopefully someone will come grab it.
Yeah, for real.
That's cool, the La Rumba thing though.
Yeah.
That's fire. La Rumba is where I definitely started dancing as well.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
La Rumba.
I seen, Mike McGee.
Yeah.
That was one of the first dudes that him and Juan, but not Juan Bachata, Juan Mejias. Yo, I seen both of those motherfuckers walk into the club one day, and I was like, I want to look like that. I was like, that's who I'm trying to. That's what I'm trying to do, because Mike just slick.
Yeah, Mike is
in and of himself.
Yeah.
And then Juan had this whole like style to him.
He has a swag.
Some crazy swag.
He has super swag.
I was astounded, dude. I'm sitting there, I'm like, holy moly, like I gotta go to get some classes. Shit. I was like, damn. But similar concept is just like I need to get myself out there.
Yeah, I know.
That's crazy. But La Rumba was definitely a place, it's like definitely a cultural like foundational stone in the scene, in my opinion, just because of how long they've been there and like what they provide and do for the scene in general,
For
Damn, this car's really not gonna shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it'll come in. Let's try to close it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Nah, I will not shut the fuck up. That's better, actually.
Yeah. That's fine. Is it still going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Just triple check that shit. Yes. It is. Cool.
All right. So I'm going to. I'll just pick it up from there. Yeah.
La Rumba.
La Rumba. Okay. All right. So, got it.
So you had a. Sorry about the sound, bro.
It's okay. No worries.
So you had your gigs at La Rumba. You were teaching there multiple days. Multiple weeks. Perfect. Multiple weeks. Your partner, who you had originally started with, had eventually gave the gig completely to you.
Essentially, correct.
Cool. So,
yeah. So at that point, La Rumba was just the gig, right? Because I'm still a musician first.
Yeah.
That's what I came here for.
Right.
That's what I was doing. But then Roberta was also like, hey, I have a couple of these private students, and they kind of want to have a lead in the private along with her. So she kind of brought me along with some of her privates.
Cool.
And then halfway through, she's like, actually, you know what, can you just take over the private? Like, let them just pay you so that I can go focus on this other privates, So she's now giving me her private students as well, and I was like, okay, as long as I do La Rumba and just the private students, that's all I'm doing. I'm like, I ain't doing anything more, And then later on down the line, she and I went to, forgetting all this coffee shop, Das Bug, right? He's there in Cherry Creek. And she was like, Tom, so what do you think about teaching actual classes, man? Like, why don't you just, start teaching some group classes? And I was like, look, Roberta, man, like, I'm already doing a lot in dance. Like, dance for me was just a place for me to come, chill, relax. But now it's like you're asking me to do a whole lot. I'm like, that's like, I don't think like teaching will necessarily be a bad thing, but it's just not my priority. And I don't know if I'm even going to be really that good at it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to like sustain it, And then the biggest part for me was like, there are just so many teachers out there already. I'm like, I don't have to be another teacher in the scene. It's like there are already enough teachers out there. It's like, let people go to all those other schools and all those other classes. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to be an extra player, in the arena. But anyways, long story short, she essentially was like, bro, trust me, you have a gift, you have something special to offer, you have something that is needed in the community right now, and you should definitely pursue this. So I kind of thought on it a little bit. I just kind of like thought it through, and then kind of try to figure out different ways that I can do it where it's like, okay, I don't have to do all of it all at once, just a little thing here, a little thing there. And so I did like one of my first series, which was called the Grooving Foot Workshop.
The grooving foot workshop.
Yeah, the Grooving Foot Workshop.
Nice.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, Charlie Garcia had just come to Denver earlier in 2017, I believe, and Nelson was the one that actually brought him. I think Nelson brought. Yeah, I think it was Nelson that brought him.
Shouts out DJ Nelson.
I know, right? Shout out DJ Nelson. I know, right? Exactly. And I was in the class, and I remember Charlie was like, okay, cool. All right, let's get started. On two. Which in Denver at the time we had some on two, but it wasn't like super proliferated yet. And so it's like on two, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, blah, 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 blah. And there were like folks, not everybody really had the whole on two thing down yet. And you can just kind of see like, he's like, oh, okay. So we cannot move that fast yet. Okay, so we have to kind of break some things down. He's like, all right. So here he is kind of like just kind of taking things down as basic as possible, right? And then he's like, all right, cool. We're going to do some shines, Suzy Q plus. Everybody is like tripping over themselves on the Suzy Q plus, and I knew many of these things, right? But I was just kind of like, oh, man, like we need to up our game in Denver, bro.
They need like a beginner.
I'm like,
introduction to
yeah,
all of it.
Right. But even more than that, it was just like I felt like before we go ahead and start bringing all these big names to our community, like we need to do some work internally first. You know what I'm saying? Sure. Double front cross, nobody had them. It's like it seemed like everybody was just kind of like really struggling on relatively basic things. And shout out to Charlie. He wasn't like, mad or upset or like, you guys don't know what the hell you're doing or whatever. He wasn't like that, which sometimes some artists can be like that, but he wasn't like that. So that was good, but it just made me realize like we needed something in-house, and so that's when I created the Grooving Foot workshop series, which was once a month, and it would have 2 hours, and then the first hour would be like a basic beginner, like super intro class, and then the second hour would be like we would kind of take that same concept, whatever it is that we did in that first hour, and then we kind of like build on top of it and like take it to the next level. So it was kind of like a true beginner intermediate series, right? And that was kind of cool. You know what I'm saying? So we'll do that once a month, and it gained popularity pretty quickly, which I was a little bit surprised about, but I was grateful for. This community has just been very, very, they've been very supportive, of, everything that I've done. And I want to take this quick moment to just say how grateful I am. I always tell everybody, I'm just this Nigerian kid that I'm just crazy and I just love to dance. I love to share and I just really I'm very passionate about this stuff. And, and to just have people that, people that actually care about what I'm about and care about what I'm passionate about and care about the love and care about the art and care about the culture and care about all of those things and care to say, hey, you know what, Tom, we support you. I'm very, very grateful because they could just choose not to. Everybody has the chance to everybody has the choice to just be like, no, I don't want to do that. They're like, oh, I'm going to go here instead. You know what I'm saying? Sure. Hell yeah. And I won't even be mad neither, because for me, I believe that everybody definitely has the right to make a choice about where they want to spend their energy, spend their time, spend their money, and all of those things, But I just want to take this moment to say thank you, because it means a lot to me. It really does, right?
Of course.
So, but these were some of the beginnings of all of those. Cool. The Grooving Foot workshop. I had an intermediate series. I called it the Gentle Touch Intermediate series, because back then, I ain't gonna lie, man, like, whew, man, a lot of the dancers in Denver, bro, at the time, it was just rough city, man. It was just rough leading, rough, rough, And I'm just like, yo, bro, calm down. Like you got to chill, And the thing that kind of exasperated that situation was now the follows were extremely stiff, but they were doing that in response to really harsh leading.
Yeah, of course. If
What I'm saying?
the first time someone pushes you really hard and your shoulder rocks back like
Bruh.
that, you are gonna lock
Exactly.
lock that shit in.
Exactly.
There's no way you're getting your shoulder ripped out of its socket.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it was a vicious cycle, because what happens is that you have rough leads, and then the rough leads create heavy follows, and then heavy follows create rougher leads. You know what I'm saying? And so the whole point for me at that time was like, hey, how can we at least start to mitigate that little by little? So that the Gentle Touch Intermediate series was one of the ways that we kind of like, I wanted to kind of start, number one, getting into like regular classes, but then actually start talking about, hey guys, we don't have to be rough to get the message across. But part of what that means is the responsibility is on both sides, is that the leads have to be clear in their leading, right? But on the other side of that coin is that the follows have to be sensitive and receptive to the leads, right? So it's about the communication factor, right? I can talk softly to you right now, but you have to be attentive to hear me. You know what I'm saying? And that sensitivity factor is such an important part. So that's why when sometimes follows are just like, oh, I just follow, and I'm like, yes, it's true, but you actually have to have. There is a responsibility.
You must be engaged.
Yeah, there's a responsibility within you that you have to own your dance as a follow. You have to own you have to have your center. You have to understand the dynamics of your frame. You have to understand this thing, your weight shift exactly. You have to have your center during your turns. These are all the things that are responsibilities of the follow. So it's not enough to just be like, oh, I just follow. Yes, that's true. However, part of following means that you have to have these techniques and these concepts within you, so that the lead does not have to like yell to get the message across. You see what I'm saying? So
you should just whisper.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
The idea is that if I can talk at this level, are you able to hear what I'm saying?
Why can't we just stay here?
Let's just stay here.
That's what I'm saying. For real though.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but anyways, but yeah, so that was the intention of that. And so the reason why that's important in all of this is because that was my first attempt into going into actual like, regular classes. Another thing that I had done was this was all Rasta Salsa, by the way. I had started doing a Monday night practica. I called it the pause and rewind. Oh, okay. I did that one up. So the other endeavor that I had at the time
under Rasta
Salsa, yes, the other endeavor that I had under Rasta Salsa was a thing called the pause and rewind practica.
Okay.
Right, and the idea of the pause and rewind practica was that it was an opportunity for people to come with their videos and they can pause it and rewind it. That's the idea, right? You pause and rewind and then practice. Them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the idea behind that. I was actually pretty proud of that.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I was proud of that. I drew out like a nice little graphic with pen and paper. I did like a little sketch. I never actually made it into a real flyer, but I'll share that with you one of these days. I was like, that's not bad. But the pause and rewind practica. So that was one of the things that I did. And I did it every Monday at 7. So that was pretty cool too. That's actually what ended up rolling into what has become like my Monday night salsa classes. So essentially, ever since then up till present day, I've had that 7 p.m. time slot for my salsa.
Oh,
you know
cool.
what I'm saying? Yeah, it's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but yeah, all of this was happening, and it was happening at 29th Street Studios. Yeah. Which I need to give another shout out here to Edith Hernandez. She was the one that rented the space out to me at the time, and she rented the space out to me like super dirt cheap. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I was just like, because I was just trying to make my way in the world, bro.
Trying to
Like,
figure it
you
out.
know,
Yeah, of
I was
course.
just trying to make it work, you know. And she was just like, hey, bro, like, I got
She
you.
believed in
She's
you.
like, exactly. She's like, I believe in you. She's like, let's do it at this rate, you know, and I got you. You know what I'm saying? So thank you for having me, because, you know, these are all of the different pieces of the puzzle that come together to create what we see now, right? There's like we were talking about before. A lot of people focus on the product and they don't think about the process, right? I mean, during the process, you have a lot of players that kind of come along your way to help you build up to what you have. You know what I'm saying? You know, so yeah, and it was a huge deal for me to be able to have a space like I had with her, you know. And then later on into towards the end of 2017, I believe it was, that's when I moved into urban survival fitness, which is the space on 40th and Steel, and that's where I essentially was running business all the way up to 2023.
That's where Lorena has her studio now, right?
That's where Lorena is now, exactly.
Shouts out Lorena.
You know, right? Shout out B Sensual.
Be sensual, baby.
Yeah, so there's like a lot. Actually, I need to talk about that later on too, if we can.
Of course.
You know. But yeah, so that's the space that I got into. And I want to give a shout out to Mr. Jeff as well, Jeff McMillan. Some people know him as the security guy from Blue Eyes, but he's not just a security guy from Blue Eyes. He actually owns the security company, and he just has people that he hires from his company and puts them at Blue Eyes. He has them at different spaces as well. So he's like a true entrepreneur as well.
That's pretty cool.
You know, yeah. So big shout out to him too, because he also really worked with me budget wise, as far as like
keeping everybody safe.
Exactly, keeping everybody safe, but also keeping the cost,
the overhead down.
The overhead down. You know, when I mean, honestly, there were times where I had like 3 people in the class, or I had like 1 person in the class. Shoot, y'all may not believe me because y'all look at social media now. You're like, oh, Tom, all your classes are popping and blah blah blah. It wasn't always like that.
Yeah,
there were some times when I had 0 people in class, 0. Nobody came to class. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But guess what? Thank God I love this dance though. Because if nobody comes to class, I'm like,
practice.
I'm like, shoot.
I'm
a practice by myself. You damn right, I'm a practice by myself. And I enjoyed that so much. I was like, you know what? I mean, I wasn't happy that nobody came to class. Okay, let's be real.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? That's fine. You know, I love to dance, so
yeah.
I'm gonna let that joy.
Let me get better.
I'm gonna work on me. You know, I'm gonna use that time to work on me.
Exactly.
You know, so but it's definitely things like, you know, like Jeff and like Edith and the people that helped with keeping the cost of the space down, that helped even during those times when maybe I did not quite make as much as I would have liked to make that month, but where I was still able to make ends meet to some degree, because of the fact that the price of the place was not exorbitant.
Yeah, so you still had that forward progression.
Correct. You know, so so definitely big shout outs to Mr. Jeff. Thank you, brother.
Wow,
I appreciate it. You know, so this is all Rasta salsa. Okay, this is all Rasta salsa at this point. You know, there's a lot of other people to thank, you know, along the way, to be honest, because you also have like Joseph Snowhawk. He would invite me over to like to Avalon, you know, and I would teach over there.
Yeah,
I had my big ass banner,
you
know. I had,
dude, shouts out Joe. Joe's the man.
He's the man.
Oh, Joe's the man. He's got La Rumba popping. He's got his Avalon going on. Been in the scene for a long time.
And he also does like sometimes the dancing under the stars. They do it over in Boulder as well. You know?
Very
so,
cool.
No, I mean, and he was, you know, before I joined Nelson. With CalDAC, he was the one that was in charge of. He was the co-organizer. Him, his wife Kasha, and Nelson were the ones that were running the Denver Salsa Bachata Congress. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, big shout out to Mr. Joseph.
Love Joe.
Joseph is
big inspiration to me for me for sure to get my game up for. Like I would go to his classes and I just didn't know how to do it. You know? I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like,
right.
He's going so fast and all these things. And I was like, wow. He really just gave me a sort of a taste of an idea of like what a forward beginner or intermediate class would look like, and like where I got to be in order to keep up with that kind of stuff. You know, so I love Joe. He's always put great event collaborators.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he definitely is. You know, so but you know, with all of that being said too, you know, we have oh yeah, Rasta Salsa story kept moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you know just to say everything in a chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, getting to Somos, and I know
Mm-hmm.
we still haven't gotten to Somos. Jeez,
Listen,
man.
no worries, bro. No worries.
Yeah. But in 2000, I'm sorry, 2020, obviously everybody understands what happened in 2020, and we had the whole pandemic situation, and all of a sudden, everything comes to a full stop,
Like full
and
stop.
yeah, like full stop, like boom, and I remember back then, bro, like, it was right the day that it happened, meaning that the day that the city of Denver said, "Hey,
Shut it
shut it
down.
down," like, that's it. We were supposed to have class that day, and it was Sissy and I. We were supposed to have class that day.
Shouts out
Yeah,
Sissy.
shout out to
Love
Sissy.
Sissy.
Yeah,
Love
yeah,
Sissy.
we
What
definitely
a
do.
great dancer.
Yeah, great dancer, amazing,
Amazing person.
soul,
Yeah.
amazing
Oh man.
soul. Yes, 1,000%. You know, and we're supposed to have class that day, and there was the whole, like, shutdown order or whatever, and I just remember we just like, because I usually would go on Facebook Live and stuff like that, right? That's what I used to do that. I still do that right now, right? And I was like, what if let's just do a Facebook Live of the class. Nobody's here, but maybe they can watch it from their houses,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this was before that's
Streaming
the
was like a
streaming
big
was like,
thing.
right,
Yeah,
exactly, right. This was the day up, so we just went ahead, set it up. I had a little tripod, set it up, boom, boom, boom. The sound was terrible, the music was not synced, everything was, but it was like, hey, look, it's
It
something.
was an attempt.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so Sissy and I, we did something at the time. I sent out a little post and said, "Hey guys, we're gonna do this stuff live. Join us."
No worries. Yeah.
We got so many people that joined us live that night. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
And it was great because, I mean, everybody was scared. Everybody was just like, "Oh my god,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen?" Blah 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 blah.
In the minds, everybody was up here.
Yeah. And so I really made a lot of different strides, at least tried to do as much pivoting as I could during those moments, you know. And this is this is um this is why it all comes right back to this whole idea of what an amazing community we have,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody just kept reaching out to me. Yeah, Tom, are you all right? Tom, how can we help? Tom, we know that this is hitting you hard right now. I mean, like, dude, my job literally goes against everything that social distancing says to do. Social distance says don't touch anybody. But everything we do is all about touching people. It's like, oh yeah, don't be within the proximity of somebody else. Everything we do is in close quarters. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so you know, of course, as a dance instructor, to be able to, like, how do you navigate through dance space when you are not allowed to dance together? Now everybody's like, now it seems so, like, I mean, intuitive. Back then it was not. In 2020, nobody knew what to do. It was just like, how are we going to make this work? You know what I'm saying?
There's a new reality that everyone just got thrown into.
Yes, absolutely. But I had a whole bunch of folks that were just like, hey Tom, whatever you do, just let us know. We will donate, we will contribute, blah 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 blah. I mean, there were some people that reached out to me and they were like, hey Tom, you know what, I want to buy a 20 pack of private lessons. And they're like, I don't even know when I'm going to use it. They're like, I don't know when I'm going to use it, but I'm just going to give you this money right now. Just put it on my credit.
Yeah.
20 pack of classes, just so that you have the money.
AKA, I believe in you.
Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And some of them never actually, they never redeemed it. They were just like, just take it, and just, we want you to succeed. Because you have people that work in tech, people that work, and they were still able to, like, keep working through those times and still make money, but they recognize that for us artists and for us instructors, that we've been hit super hard, and so the community really came through. The community really came through, and I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you from the very bottom of my heart. I cannot thank you enough, because without the community, man, I don't know what the heck would have happened. I don't know what the heck would have happened, because it was really a community effort, and I cannot say that enough, man. But anyways, I'll move on. Thank you guys. Thank you. Um, so, we fast forward to 2023. 2023 was when Somos, the dance studio, I purchased the building, and I actually started to do classes that were not just Tom.
Right.
And so
More of a collaboratory space.
exactly. So when anybody say what's Somos, Somos comes from that idea of it's not about me, it's about us, aka we are. Somos, we are. Right? Somos nosotros, right? You know what I'm saying?
And you took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. So Somos, that's where that came from. And so yeah, purchased the building in 2023, and just started to get all of the instructors that we had. I had some instructors that I'd already been training, so started getting them classes, and then I had some other instructors that came on board, that aligned with the vision of Somos, and we just started to add them on and add them on and add them on. And before you know what's happening, I was looking the other day and it was like, oh my gosh, we have like 15 instructors, 16 instructors, and it's actually kind of surreal to think that, you know what I'm saying? But it's but I really am very grateful for each and every one of them and everything that they bring to the table, because it's really awesome. Everybody has, everybody really buys into the vision, and that's huge, to have like this organization of people that just really care about the vision, but they also care about each other, and they also care about the people, you know what I'm saying? So so that's kind of what Somos has become, and I'm super proud of Somos, and I'm proud of the students. I'm proud of the community that the people have built, because all I think about Somos, I think about like I have this table that I kind of set before them, and everybody then chooses to like come on board, and then there's like, okay, this one's going to interact with this one, this one interacts with this one. Okay, now this has a little sub community. Now they have a little sub community. Oh, now they're not talking to each other, and then now you have this bigger thing, and everybody like. One of the favorite things that I love to see is after class, especially after the like the beginner classes, where you have people that come in for the first time, and just to kind of see people just talking to each other. Some of the old, some of the people that have already been in the, that the current Somos students, seeing the new people, like, hey, are you new? It's like, oh, okay, my name is Nate. Oh, hey, Nate, my name is Jackie. Nice to meet you. Blah, 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 blah. Where are you from? Seeing all of that happening in that little small hallway, and the small hallway just gets so like this, of people just like interacting, mingling. I love that. And then I go to the parking lot and I see people, they're just talking and just chilling, and you have people like, oh, you're a nurse? Oh, I'm a nurse too. Like, right. Oh, I'm at St. Joe's. Like, oh, yeah, I'm at St. Jude's. Blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden you have all these connections that are being created, and it's really beautiful for me to see that. But it's the people choosing to connect. Right. You see what I'm saying? Right. And that's what really keeps my heart like full. I don't have to like ask people to connect. They just see the opportunity to connect and they connect. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I love that, man. Right. I love that with with all of my being. It's really, really great. So
I think that just speaks to your space though, bro.
Thank you, man.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you create a space that allows that to be a comfortability for people. So it comes naturally. It's not forced. Right. But that's a pure example. Actually, no, I don't want to say pure, but that's a surefire example of environment. You put people in the environment, a specific environment of like cultivating some kind of communication, some kind of like interaction, and people feel comfortable to do that, so they do so. So that's on you, man. You did that. You know what I mean? So
I appreciate it.
That's really how it is.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I mean, my main thing is just always to make sure that everybody understands that is a place for everybody. Yeah. And I also know that for some folks, maybe the teaching style might be a little bit different from what they want, or maybe it might be a little bit too far for some folks to come out there. Maybe the price point might not necessarily be exactly what people are looking for. And I just always want to say that I completely get that. You know what I'm saying? And but I still want people to understand that does not change the fact that I still absolutely adore everybody in our community, in our overall dance community, because not everything is for everybody. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Right, for sure.
But we have to just believe that we are all
a part of something bigger.
A part of something bigger. You know what I'm saying? Amen. So I always like to put that out there, for people to just know, like, hey, look, somos nosotros, y'all. Like, we all, come on, let's go.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. It's cool. So, Somos, is definitely like your brainchild, and it's beautiful to hear your story of like where you started with your Rasta Salsa, and then everything sort of popped off after like 2020, and you really solidified this sort of like studio idea, and you really ran with it in 23. You know, and you did 2 years of your anniversary. So congratulations, bro. That's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Thank
And then so you have that, but you also do CalDAC as well,
you.
but you're executive director of CalDAC.
Mhm.
So what I know, I don't know how recent that was for you, but it seems like, you know, Somos and CalDAC sort of all happened at the same time in a way, right?
So it's a little bit different
Cool.
timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of going on CalDAC. So CalDAC is the rebrand of the Denver Salsa Bachata Congress.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Denver Salsa Bachata Congress has been happening. The Denver Salsa Bachata Congress started in 2013.
Cool.
Yeah, and that was Nelson, Joseph Snowhawk, and Kasha Snowhawk that were in charge of running that.
Yeah.
You know, so that has been going on, and of course, you know, it started from like I think it was like 150 people, and then it went to like like 300, and then it went to like 600, and you know what I'm saying. So like it kept growing and growing and growing year after year.
Huge Congress.
Oh yeah,
huge.
It's pretty awesome.
So cool.
It's great. Yeah. You know, but for everything that CalDAC is now, I always like to talk about, you know, Joseph and Kasha that were part of it, and Nelson that were part of it from the beginning, because I didn't join in until, get ready for this, until 2020. You know, so early, like January 2020, you know, that's when Joseph decided that he was going to step down, you know, from doing the Congress, you know, and Nelson had reached out to me about doing the Congress, you know. Long story short, I said, sure. You know, I personally have never really considered myself an organizer. I love to dance. I love to teach. Those are my main passions, you know. You know, but Nelson had reached out to me and was like, hey, you know what, I really would like to partner with you. I trust you, and I really believe that we can make something out of this, you know. And so I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. And then, of course, you know, I said yes in February 2020. And then March comes around, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, by the way, all those plans that you guys were having, not happening. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, we ended up not doing the Congress that year, but we did it in 2021. And so the first Congress that I actually did with Nelson was in 2021.
Cool.
You know, we took a couple of risks.
Yeah,
you know, we took a couple of you know, financial risks as well, because honestly at that time you never really knew what was going on.
Well,
you know, I mean, there were some stories that of some hotels, or like there's some risk, because you know, back in those days the CDC would just come up with something, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, everything just shuts down. You know, it's just like, okay, yeah, by the way, no, you're not longer doing that anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it was definitely risky as far as that goes, but also risky in terms of like, you know, we decided to take a couple of risks as far as like doing a band every night, for example. You know, a couple of risks about like really like bringing a lot more, you know, a lot more national and international artists. You know, because that stuff is expensive. You know what I'm saying? It really is expensive, and it's a lot of money to try to like put down all at once, hoping that you're going to recuperate back. Right. You know,
no guarantees.
Yeah, no, none. You know. But you know, grateful that, you know, we're able to at the very least be able to like recuperate what it was that we put in. We had a very successful first year, and going forward as well. You know, 2021 was great, and then in 2022, I mean, I'd already told Nelson about this in 2020, but I think it's in 2022 that we finally decided to become a non-profit organization. You know, I told Nelson when I first joined, I'm like, hey, you know what? I think we can do better good as a non-profit organization. I feel like there's a lot more that we can do as a non-profit versus a for-profit. And people ask me the question, they're like, well, what's the main difference? You know, and I'm saying, and I let them know, like, for profit, for the most part, just by definition, right? The activities and all of those are, the idea is beholden to the shareholders, if you may. Yeah, the idea is making that money. The idea is making that profit. You know, if you have a for profit that keeps on not making money year after year after year after year after year, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what the hell is going on? You know, for profit, it's not to say that the for profit needs, for a non-profit, right? I should say a non-profit. It's not to say that a non-profit needs to live their whole existence in the red, but it's just that the idea of making money is not at the
Forefront
forefront,
of the yes. I hear you.
of the activities.
Right.
At the forefront of the activities is actually trying to make a difference. Trying to actually make a difference in the communities that we directly serve. Right.
Right.
And I said, hey Nelson, I want this Congress, which was a Congress at the time, I want it to be more than just a party that we come to once a year. Everybody comes, everybody dances, you listen to live music, you learn, and then you social dance, and then you go back home, and then that's it, and then I'll see you next year. I'm like, I would like for us to be able to do something more. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll tell everybody right now, one of my biggest dreams, is I want to be able to have, you know, a huge concert, like let's say, hey, just call me a big dreamer, but Ruben Blades, right? We bring Ruben Blades and we are able to offer Ruben Blades, to the to low income families, right? For $10. $10. And the only reason why I wouldn't even say free is just because we want people to have skin in the game, right? But in reality, I'm like, you know what? Somebody that's coming in from a low income family, I want us to be able to create a concert that is at a high caliber, but they have access
accessibility.
to. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
And these are the kinds of things that, even though it's a big dream and it's like, dude, like,
very possible, very feasible.
You
very,
know what
very
I'm saying?
All very feasible. Very, very feasible.
The whole idea
You
is
be
like,
barking up the right tree. Very feasible.
And that's where that's what I want to use the nonprofit space for, is to be able to say, hey, we don't get to say you are of low means, so you don't deserve
to be a part
of a cultural experience. You know what I'm saying? And so, so for me, those are the kinds of impacts I want to make. Impact such as, so yeah, you have somebody that is in, that's underprivileged and underserved communities, right? But they really want to learn how to dance, and they really want to pursue dance as a career, and now we opened up into CalDAC because we wanted to be able to say not just dance, but even all other kinds of arts, and they want to pursue a career, in visual arts, right? But because of the fact that they're from an underserved community, all of a sudden, they are not able to afford that. We want to be able to be like, hey, we're going to give you a scholarship so that you can go to a school of your choice, and actually pursue this dream. These are the kinds of impact that we're trying to have. To be honest with you, where we are right now, I feel that we are not in a position to be able to do all of these things yet, but that's just the current situation. But after
it's only 2025.
I know. After all is said and done, I believe in dreams, bro. I believe in dreaming big. This is my heart desire. This is what I would really like to bring into fruition.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna dream the shit out of it.
You got to.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you got to.
I'm not gonna dream small because of the fact that because of where I am now. I'm not gonna dream to my current situation. I'm gonna dream to what it is that can happen in the future. You know what I'm saying? Even if I don't know exactly how we're gonna get there yet.
Exactly.
And so after all is said and done, in 2022, when we finally decided to become a nonprofit organization, these were a lot of the things that were going on in our minds about, hey, you know what, we can create impact. Let's just go ahead and turn into a nonprofit and let's start working our way towards that. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, the Congress obviously is a money generator, right? And the whole point of that is to be able to get enough funds to be able to, so that eventually we're able to actually start to like put all of these initiatives into play. And we already, and like, for example, last year, sorry, I'm kind of like moving, but I'm going to come back. Like last year, I was thinking about that whole scholarship thing that I just told you right now, and I was like, oh man, I really wish we could do that right now, but I guess we just have to wait. And then something clicked, and it was like, you know what? Maybe you cannot do it at that level yet,
yes,
but you can do something. And I was like, huh. Okay, then I start doing like this as if I had like Gandalf's beard, I'm like, and I'm like thinking, and I was like, hey, you know what if there was a way that we were able to reach underserved communities and offer Congress tickets? it's something small. It's not necessarily like, Juilliard scholarship or whatever, but hey, you get this underserved, or this low income family,
And you expose
person,
them
and you
to
get to expose them into something that they probably otherwise would not have been able to afford, like a $250-$300 ticket. You know what I'm saying? How about you do that? You know? And so I was like, okay, let me do that. So of course I started reaching out to some of the other nonprofit organizations that serve, that on the
underprivileged communities.
underprivileged communities. And I was like, all right, well, here's what we're going to do, right? We are going to offer X amount of passes to people that, meet certain criteria,
Right.
to make sure that we are giving these kinds of opportunities to the right people.
Right.
Because that's like a big part of it, is like, we want to make sure that the right
The
people,
right,
it's
right.
getting in the right
The
hands,
funds,
you
right.
know. And yeah, and so we started from somewhere, you know what I'm saying? And we were able to offer a couple last year, both for some college students, right? And for some folks that were adults, like full blown adults. Not to say college students are not adults, but but actual like working parents and things like that.
Yeah.
We're able to offer a couple of those, what we call them scholarships, because, well, they are. You know what I'm saying? Free passes to the Congress. And I was like, you know what? That's a start.
Sure.
And we can start from somewhere and then
Yeah.
keep on moving
Keep
forward,
moving.
and then keep on adding on.
You plant
and
the
then,
seed, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then little by little, we can start to like create the actual funds and the actual buckets that we can start to like allocate funds into, right? That we can use very specifically to try to create other kinds of opportunities that are outside of just the Congress.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So, and we're just consistently like brainstorming ways that we can affect change in our immediate community,
Surrounding, right.
in our immediate surrounding, right? Just how can we create change, and how can we make positive strides in our most immediate environment, and start from there. So yes, we have that huge Ruben Blades vision in the future. Yes, but we can do a little bit now. You see what I'm saying? And I'm grateful for that. So kind of backtracking again now to 2022. So 2022 will become a nonprofit organization for these reasons, and then in 2024, the beginning of 2024 was when we rebranded to CalDAC, which stands for the Colorado Afro-Latin Dance and Arts Collective.
Very cool.
And then the Denver Salsa Bachata Congress, the actual event, became CalDAC Convention.
Cool.
And we did a lot on the rebranding, mainly because we wanted to make sure that everything that we are about is essentially spelled out in the name.
Yeah.
Colorado, that's where we are.
Boom.
Afro-Latin, that's the diaspora, and that's the culture that we are trying to expose and put out there, right? Dance and arts. So dance, of course, which is is our main player, but arts is going to be something that
arts in
general.
Yeah.
So we start to like move into music, we start to like move into like literature, we start to move into visual arts and things like that. And collective is just all of us together.
Everybody together.
You see what I'm saying? So everything is spelled out in the name. You know what I'm saying? And then we changed the word Congress to convention, mainly because of the fact that I believe the word Congress, I think, especially to people who are not necessarily in the salsa scene, like when you go out and you go try to talk about what it is that we do to somebody that is just outside, an outside player, the moment they see the word Congress, automatically something political could
negative,
kind of pops up in their head. You know what I'm saying? And then you have to now try to explain it. But here's the problem. In the moment you have to try to explain something to somebody, you've already lost half of the population.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But everybody knows what a convention is. You know what I'm saying? So, you think of, CalDAC, CalDAC convention, you think about Comic-Con, you think about any of these other conventions that happen. Automatically, you get it. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why we changed the name to CalDAC and we changed Congress to Convention.
Strategic.
So
very cool.
I make things as clear as possible from the very get-go.
That's so cool.
Makes it much easier for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. So cool. We're jumping around timelines here, and we finished eventually 2024 where you guys finally rebranded, and we were coming around. In 2025, Congress is coming in October. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be great.
Awesome.
Tom has graced us with a promo code for specific tickets.
Yes.
So if you want to put in Los Muertos in the discount code for Tom's ticket, I think it was what, 50%?
So it's going to be for that. That's going to be $15 off.
$15 off the tickets, and so make sure to check that out. CalDAC Convention, Los Muertos, LOZMUROTEZ. I don't know how to spell, but spell Muertos with a Z, and you got it. And you'll get $15 off your ticket. No worries. Sort of like last hit of the conversation, I would love to go back to 2021 when you said, after COVID you have experienced COVID, your Rasta Salsa days had sort of looked like a little bit grim, right? Like very scary. Like your means of income, your means of like putting yourself out there completely zits. Everything that you were about has flipped it on its head, right? And you had someone mention to you, and I'm going to quote what you said, what do you want most in this world? And what your response was, understanding, some kind of understanding. And I think a big thing that you had mentioned was in 2021 that you saw something in society that really needs a change. And what was that thing?
Communication, man.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah, I think that there is just so much breakdown in communication, and just like we were talking about, I think communication is one thing. The whole idea of understanding is, if I believe that if we can truly believe, so if we can truly have the mind of trying to understand the other, right? It doesn't mean that you have to agree with them,
right?
And I think that's the part that I have to be very clear about. Is it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. It also doesn't mean that you should not have an opinion of your own regarding anything. I just really believe that we all have our life experiences. We all have our opinions regarding our life experiences and about what we are experiencing.
Right, what we see in the world around us.
Correct, exactly. And I really believe that sometimes when we are all relegated to our individual, spaces,
Worlds.
echo chambers, like little, like, I feel like it segregates us so much intellectually, like emotionally, spiritually, culturally, all of those things, right? And without us truly looking at the other and saying, hey, you know what? You have an opinion about something, and I have an opinion about that same thing, and they're diametrically opposed. Okay, got it. But this is your idea. It's like your hat, right? This is my idea. It's my hat, right? And when we get into the conversations about those ideas, if at its very core, we can look at this person and say, I see you, you. I don't see your idea. I don't see, your beliefs. I see you
as a human being.
Right. As much as I want you to see me as a human being, and then our ideas can compete, and our ideas can, go at each other, and then and may the best man win or whatever, and being able to also accept agreeing to disagree as an acceptable outcome of a conversation. I think that is something that is sometimes missing in our society these days. You know what I'm saying? And and after all is said and done, I really believe that if people are able to allow space for the other to be able to have their own ideas and their own convictions, and I allow space in my life, in my views, in my existence for that, I feel like it gives the other the opportunity to be able to open up to me
Communicate.
and open up to me about what it is that ails them, what it is that they're really about, what it is that they want in life, how it is that they view things, which makes it a little bit easier for me to also be able to air that to that other individual, right? And then we can have an open dialogue around these things, right? Rather than me just automatically shutting that person down, you know? And I think that idea of just shutting that person down or the other person shutting me down is the kind of, is that, I feel like is that callus that has been building that just separates us a lot more. And yes, I am a very big believer that there is so much more that unites us than divides us.
Amen.
You know, and we just have to seek that out.
Right.
We have to seek that out. And I don't know. To me, that's a big like for example, right? We take something along the lines of cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation, right? And that was a conversation that I had. You know, I had this conversation with my sister, and there was a lady that was wearing, I think it was like she was a white lady, and she was wearing like an African headgear, right? And Nigerian, actually, to be specific. And I was just talking to my sister, and I said, "Hey, so Susie, look at that lady." I was like, "You see her hair thing?" She's like, "Oh, that is kind of cute." I was like, "Yeah, it is cute." But what do you think? Do you think that, would you consider that appropriation? Right? And then a conversation ensued. I'm not even going to tell you guys or tell you about what the conversation went into. But the point was that a conversation ensued.
To find some kind of understanding.
And that's it, you know, to try to find out where it is. Because, you know, on the one hand, actually, I think I am just going to tell you, I'm going to give you a little bit of the conversation. I'm just going to go into it, right? Not all the way, but just a little bit. You know, my sister was like, "Hey, every context matters," you know, because there's a difference between, for example, if, you know, that lady bought that from Target, you know, and it was just something that was just mass produced, and it was not even, there was no mention of, like, you know,
where it comes from,
or all of those kinds of things, right? You know, or, you know, which could be considered appropriation at that point, right? Versus maybe that lady is like, oh, maybe she went to Nigeria in the summer of 2017, and the village that she stayed in, or the family that she stayed in, they gifted it to her, right? They gifted it to her, and they were like, "Hey, thank you so much for being here. We really loved having you here. Here is this, blah, 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 token of appreciation." And then she's wearing it here in appreciation of that, right? Context matters, right? And so if you have somebody that just automatically went and said, "You are not supposed to be wearing that," it's like
it cuts out the communication.
Communication is
the
lost.
Understanding is not there.
You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah,
and so, you know, so my desire for the world is just that we can be a little bit more open in our conversation, right? And that with that open communication, I think if people can really people can feel heard, right? People can feel understood. I think that actually helps open up the communication more. But if people don't feel heard or feel understood, they are more likely to just not say anything. They're just like, you know, they're going to judge me anyway, so I'm just not going to say anything. You know, and you have a lot of people that live their life like that these days, that they just don't say anything because they're like, if I say anything, I'm going to be demonized. You see what I'm saying? And that's not a very good space to be in if we're really trying to grow as a society and as a community. You know, is that, you know, I feel understanding. That's just me. You know, I feel like if we can have more understanding in the world as a whole, not just like in the Salsa community, but in the world as a whole, you know, if I can truly understand your pain, you know, when I say something in a certain way, then maybe I'm less likely to say that
in that way,
right? You know what I'm saying? It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to solve all the problems. Let me just say that out there right now.
It's a process.
But I just believe that that's one of the things that we can use to heal our world.
Wow. I completely relay your sentiment, bro. I definitely agree with you on that. And I'm so very grateful to have had you today, bro.
Oh, man.
Thank you very much for this wonderful conversation.
It's my pleasure, man.
I look forward to all of your events coming forward. I look forward to collaborating with you, bro.
Yes,
I really appreciate, you know, just this dialogue that we've been able to have. I'm sure the viewers will too. And with that being said, Tom Ogunribido.
Yes.
Tom Ogunribido.
That's right.
Yeah. The man, the myth, the legend, owner of Somos Studios, executive director of CalDAC, bro. Thank you very much for being here with me today, and I look forward to the future.
Absolutely.
Give me some. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
That was great.
Yes.
Yeah. How was that for you? Easy?
It was good.
Good.
It was good.
Perfect.
Good.
I'm glad.
Actually, I there's one more thing I wanted to put in.
Yeah,
I didn't even know where it's gonna fall into the whole thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this goes back to what you were saying about like the space that Lorena is in right
Yeah.
now.
Oh yeah.
This is a very important part of an important project for me. When I left Urban Survival Fitness, which is the name of the space used to be, especially because
let me check to see if we're still rolling. I'm pretty sure we're good. Okay. Sorry.
We got it. No worries.
Urban Survival Space.
Yeah. So when I left the Urban Survival Fitness, which was the name of the space, in April of 2023, I remember at that time how much history that I had with the space.
Okay.
Okay. And I mean, that was the space that I came up in, essentially.
Yeah,
what I'm saying? And I understood how much opportunity that space afforded me. Yeah. And so as I was leaving that space, Jeff was like, okay, Jeff is the person I was renting it from. He was leasing the space. I was renting from him. Jeff was like, all right, cool. Well, since you got your space now, congratulations. He had a gym in the back. He's like, I'm going to take that gym. I'm going to take it out of there. I'm done. My lease is over in April and I'm not going to renew it, And I was like, well, so what's going to happen to this place?
Yeah.
He's like, well, I don't know. Maybe the owner might tear it down, turn it into like a mechanic shop or like, whatever, like, but,
nah.
And I was like,
you can't destroy
I'm like, don't do that. Exactly. And that's when I was like, yo, man, I know it was a lot. And even up to today, sometimes I think maybe I overdid it. I don't know, whatever, but I have a tendency to do stuff like that anyways, and I was like, nah, man, let me take over the lease, bro. And he was like, are you sure? Like, you already just got the space. Why are you going to? I'm like, there are other instructors
that can utilize
that can use this space. There are other instructors.
And you're about to give it to some bimbo that's about to ruin it.
Yeah. They're going to they're probably going to break the mirrors,
all the mirrors,
and the floors there are really nice. So they were just going to take all the floors and just like rip them open, And I was like, no, let me take over the lease on this time. And so let me be able to use this place that was a blessing to me. Let me be able to make it a blessing to others. Let me be able to provide this space for those teams that need a good place to practice, not a space where it has mirrors but the floors are crappy, or it has good floors but there are no mirrors, or it's like it's a tiny space or a tiny box that they cannot really work on their formations, stuff like that. I'm like, you know what? Let me have a space for that. Let me have a space for people who are just like starting and teaching and they're trying to get their classes off the ground. Let me get a space where we can have them be there. You know what I'm saying? Let me get a space for, people who want to do like a small social or whatever, right? So they have a space that they can do it at, and that was my dream that brought up Casa Dance Studio. So Casa Dance Studio is the third thing that I do, Casa Dance Studio. And, and my hope and my dream is gradually coming into fruition. And I'm super happy about Lorena was one of the first people that I rented it to. So Lorena is there and she is like, she's killing the game, and I love that, and I love to be able to see that she's able to use that space like that and grow, because that's kind of what happened with me. I used the space and it grew, and that's why I didn't want that space to go away. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. So that space can be, because Lorena is going to be there. Maybe she'll be there a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe two. And then, she would probably find a bigger space, or maybe she might buy a place, and then she transitions to that. And then somebody, you know what I'm saying?
But again, part of dance history, dance culture in the Denver area, like growing and ascending it into what it is today, or something bigger than itself, right? So
Correct.
you're preserving that space and that area in order to like keep that moving.
Exactly. And so that has always been my goal with that place. And then so we have like Cabrina, who does like Samba Colorado. She's there. We have Denver.
Shouts out Cabrina.
Yeah, shout out to Cabrina. That's right.
Shouts out Cabrina.
We have Denver Zook is over there as well. With Rachel Farley and Devoneer Hill. And Nelson does every second Saturday, every second Friday there. He does the Denver Senso Bachata. He does that over there as well. So you have all of these things that are beginning to happen in the space. And that really warms my heart that the community can utilize it. And so it's my goal to just make sure that, hey, look, anybody that is out there that just needs a space, to know that space is available, so that we can all together utilize it to grow the community at large.
Hell
yeah. Yeah. So just wanted to make that available for everybody to know at the very least.
I'll when we talk about, I'll snip this back in, just put it in where it was like relevant in the conversation, and then it'll roll just like normal. So yeah,
there you go. I love it.
That was great. That was great. Good job.
That was awesome.
Yeah, we killed that shit.
I think we did okay.
No,
right?
No, it was great. It was great. Very organic, very chill, very.